Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you today about loopers, specifically my journey from early Boss small loopers all the way to my current looper, the Singular Sound Aeros Loop Studio. In particular, I'm going to talk more in depth about the differences between it and my previous looper, the Boss RC505. Now, right off the bat, I want to apologize for my voice. I'm still getting over a bit of a cold, so just bear with me on that. First, we're going to talk about my very first looper, the Boss RC20XL, which for me was a very basic looper, but I wasn't really doing much with looping at the time. I probably used that a few times just for practice. Then I had moved on to the Digitech Trio Plus, which was great. It was like magic. You could play something and it would figure out a bass line, usually kind of terrible, and some drums to go with it. The drums were not bad. But the sound quality was kind of lacking, and even though it was really powerful in terms of having multiple song parts, it just wasn't doing it because it didn't have a MIDI in-out capability to sync with other devices. The drums were kind of cheesy MIDI sounding a little bit. The bass was kind of not so great. I wanted to create the bass lines myself, so I moved on from there to the Ditto X4 from TC Electronic. Now, this was a great looper. But the issue with it was, well, it was just huge. You know, I only needed the two channels. All the effect stuff, that was a waste of space for me because I'm not going to use some of this cheesy, weird effects on the loops. I want the two loops so I can do song parts. So eventually I wound up moving on from it. At some point during my looper journey, I took a sidetrack into vocal effects. This led me to the TC Helicon Voicelive 3 Extreme. It has a looper that many people swear by, but I just couldn't really bond with the unit itself. I didn't like the guitar sounds. The vocal sounds were great, but the guitar sounds were pretty terrible. So I just wound up not really using the looper on that. I just got rid of the whole thing. A similar story for the Voicelive Touch, just looking for vocals. There is a looper on there, and it's supposed to be similarly powerful, but I just couldn't bond with the unit, so that went. Then I'd gotten out of looping for a little while, but after a while, wanting to get back into it, I checked out the Digitech Strum, so that led me to their Jamman Solo XT looper, which is a great looper, but it's one track. Now, there is some kind of weird hack where you can make a makeshift foot switch that actually presses a button save on the controller so that then you can change to a different loop so that you can try to do multiple song parts live, but it's super hacky. And even if you do that, it means that you have to play the loop at least once in order to save it, and then you have to repeat it more than necessary. It's not a very good solution. But while I was trying that, I also tried the Jamman Express XT to see if I could get multiple song parts working somehow in terms of muting one and then the other. There's some sort of solution I was looking at, and it just didn't really pan out, so I sold that too. All of this eventually led me up to the Boss RC505, which is a great looper. And honestly, before the Aeros, what I felt was the top of the line. It's got 5 tracks. You can do sequential and parallel loops. MIDI sync in and out. It has MIDI control, lots of built-in effects. Great for the DJ person, great for the beatboxer, loop artist. The thing that actually made me skip out with it was the fact that, well, I heard the Aeros was coming out, and the Aeros has a lot better capability to support sequential and parallel loops at the same time. With the RC505, it's like, hey, this one track can't play along with anything else that's said to be sequential. Right, so you can't actually pair 2 tracks to go together and another 2 tracks to go together. You can't do any of that kind of stuff. The RC505 has lots of built-in effects, allowing you to play it as its own instrument. It's great for the DJ, great for the beatboxer, but for the guitarist who has their hands busy, it's not so great. There is sort of a control jack in, so you can get 2 buttons to mess around with to select a track and then record and that sort of a thing. But without an external MIDI controller or that, foot switch to the 2 buttons, you can't really access anything with your feet. Whereas on the Aeros, you have those 4 foot switches, and they can do multiple things depending on tapping, holding, that sort of business. Now, on the RC505, there are 5 tracks, sort of mix and match a little bit what the Aeros would call song parts and tracks. We already talked about how song parts on the RC505 are very limited. You can't play any other tracks along with them in a paired sort of way. Now, one of the great things about Aeros is that they are consistently updating the product. This means that unlike Boss, which, Boss has this tendency to over-engineer everything at first, but then after they release it, never really listening to the user. And so, you're lucky with Boss products if you get one update after it comes out. And so if you didn't get heard in that update, then you're never getting heard. Now, with the Aeros, you can go onto the forums, you can talk directly to the CEO himself. And this way you're able to get your voice heard and get features in that you would like. It's also good because if there's any weird bugs that come up, you can directly communicate with them. Now, one of the genius moves, I think, for Singular Sound, and this is probably a game changer, maybe an industry game changer, is that it has Wi-Fi in the unit itself. So you can connect it to your Wi-Fi, your internet, and it will check itself if there are updates. It will download those updates itself and install them itself. That's huge. The Line 6 Helix, which is a great pedal, I love that pedal, but it has a problem with every update of users having trouble following the instructions. They might have issues with their USB ports. They might not have downloaded the right file. There's all these sorts of things that users can get wrong in this process. Singular Sound has sidestepped all of it. That's a genius move. There's a number of other features on the Aeros which are great, probably a step above the RC505. One of those is input level monitoring. On the RC505, you get one red LED. And actually, there's a lot of tests and recordings I did where I could hear there was clipping going on even before the red LED lit up. That's problematic. Now, I was able to back down eventually and find a level by ear where there wasn't any clipping going on. But that's still something that's not user-friendly. On the Aeros, you actually get like a view meter that pops up that shows you what your levels are, so you see it on the whole spectrum. So before you get loud, you can see where you are, so you're able to see what kind of headroom you have visually, which is a great feature to have.
Now, there's a couple of other features on the Aeros which are just great compared to the RC505. One of the main ones is this touchscreen. Now, hey, you might not think a touchscreen is a great idea on a pedal, but let me tell you, if you have to have settings that you want to move through, then this screen is great for that, because let me show you what the RC505 looks like scrolling through settings. Okay, so I'm turning this knob and you see there's all these settings that show up, but you don't know, there's no indication of how many there are, where to go back. It can take you a long time to move through these, and it's just not a very nice way to consume it. Whereas look at this touchscreen where I'm scrolling, you can see that it's very natural to flow through these settings.
And check out this keyboard right here. It's great to see that feature on a pedal, considering how painful naming presets and things like that in other pedals are.
Now really, I think the main difference between Aeros and RC505 is what instrument you're playing. If you're a beatboxer or some sort of live looper where you're using synths or something and both your hands maybe are available, then the RC505 makes perfect sense. You get all these cool effects and things that you can do with your voice and volume control right there on each channel, like everything accessible by your hands, and it's right there on the table for you. Now, those exact things are kind of what makes it difficult for a guitarist to use, or some other musician who has both their hands busy. You really want foot control. So that means the RC505 is not really a great option unless you add a whole nother MIDI controller or that try to get by with that foot switch. The Aeros winds up being much better for the musician that has a pedal board for a number of reasons. One, it's a whole lot of functionality, more than pretty much any other looper. More channels, more song parts. A lot of loopers don't even have the concept of song parts. MIDI in and out. A lot of loopers don't have MIDI in and out, so they can sync to something like the Beat Buddy or your other gear. But another really good advantage of the Aeros over something like the Ditto X4 or something like that is it's small. It's comparable in size to the Line 6 Stomp or some pedals like that. It's not, it's not tiny. It's not a mini pedal, but it's smaller than the Ditto X4. It's maybe twice, 2.5 times the size of the Digitech Solo XT. Okay guys, so I hope you enjoyed my video discussing the Aeros Loop Studio. Feel free to ask any questions in the comment sections and let me know if there's any other content you would like to see on the Aeros. I have been making some other videos, sort of like a one-man band setup with the Aeros. Feel free to check those out. I'll try to have those in the links. Thank you, and please subscribe.